Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world. I do hope you're doing very well and enjoying the beautiful weather we're having late before it starts getting a lot colder. So I hope you're enjoying your day or your evening. Go and get yourself a lovely drink because we're on the final part of our story, which is very, very exciting because there has been a rather unusual Bigfoot encounter. So let's continue with the final part of our story. But before we do, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bell and the thumbs up. And let's continue with part 4 of our story tonight.
Mummy, Daniel saw the bear man in the woods. Didn't you, Daniel?
Said little Lacey excitedly, pointing to me.
Tell her, Daniel. Tell my mummy that my friend is real.
At this, I went a little red in the face. I ignored Lacey's comments, for I knew Mrs. Donovan thought the bear man was fictitious, and if I said he was real and that I'd seen him, I would likely look as nutty as a fruitcake.
Oh, I see. Is that it? So that's why you wandered off into the woods, Lacey. You were looking for the bear man, your fictitious little friend, were you?
She looked up at me and gave me a wink. Mrs. Donovan's eyes softened.
I know it gets lonely for you at times, sweetheart, when you haven't got other children your age to play with. But I really don't want you wandering into the woods again on your own. Do you understand that?
Lacey nodded, and Mrs. Donovan looked up at us apologetically.
I'm sorry to have been so hard on you boys, she said. I was in a dreadful state, that's all, when I couldn't find Lacey anywhere. I was worried sick, but I know that I am partly to blame, because I allowed myself to get unnecessarily distracted. It's all right, Mrs. Donovan, said my brother. I'm sorry we didn't bring Lacey back to you straight away.
Me and my brother watched Mrs. Donovan walk away with Lacey, holding her little hand. My heart sank in my chest, because somehow I knew our plan had failed catastrophically. I was sure that no checks for $500 would be coming our way, from Mrs. Donovan, that is. Ethan turned around to me with a look of disdain on his face.
I hope you're proud of yourself, Daniel. Your plan for extracting $500 from Mrs. Donovan has gone up in smoke for sure. Somehow I've got a funny feeling no money will be coming our way. What the hell are we going to do now? Thanks a bunch, bro, for your lousy plan. It's backfired on us for sure. Look, bro, I said to my brother, I'm sorry I screwed this up for you. But my plan was insane. I don't know why I thought it would even work. I felt like a right cad when poor Mrs. Donovan ran up to us. She was a broken woman in that moment. What we did to her was very wrong. I feel ashamed for causing her so much grief. Didn't I tell you your plan sucked? Said Ethan. But no, you wouldn't listen. You said it would work, and that Mrs. Donovan would magically transform into a money machine and start hemorrhaging money to us. I'm telling you, Daniel, there is no way I can raise $500 to give to Seth O'Connor. I don't know what the hell to do. I'm completely defeated, he said, putting both his hands on his head in a gesture of despair. You know what you need to do, I told my brother very firmly. You need to go to Lena Johnson and tell her that Seth is trying to blackmail you. If she doesn't believe you, then, as far as I'm concerned, you're better off without her. You're not a cheater, and if she doubts your integrity, then your relationship is never going to last anyway. You're right, said my brother. I'm going to have to tell Lena, and I don't know what I'm going to do if she doesn't believe me, because the last thing I want is to lose her. Mrs. Donovan. This had been one of those mornings, one of those unorthodox mornings, you could say, that I knew I would never forget in a hurry. It had started with the arrival of Mr. Lambourne at our front door, a man I'd never met before a day in my life. He was trying his damnedest to sell me a Hoover, and yes, you've guessed it, I purchased one from him. I knew I needed a Hoover anyway, and I was also trying to get rid of him. He was a sweet enough character, of course he was. The kind of person that never seems to get the hint that he has outstayed his welcome. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt this flustered before. As after Mr. Lambourne had left in his mustard-coloured Mustang, my whole world turned upside down for a horrifying moment.
I thought my little girl Lacey had gone missing, and the terror I felt in those dreadful moments, well, there are no words. No mother should ever have to go through the horror of wondering where their child has got to. But I must admit I did have a similar occasion once before, when Lacey left my side at the grocery store, and I couldn't find her anywhere. One of the store managers found her playing with a dead fish at the fish counter. Apparently she'd been trying to revive it. I'd never been more relieved to see her when he brought her back to me.
"Why did you wander off like that, Lacey?" I asked my girl. "I wanted to make the fish better. He was cold. His eyes looked so sad. He was dead, Mummy."
"That's because people eat fish," I told her, to which she replied that she didn't want to eat fish again, as she was sad that they were all dead. I thought my little girl was not being serious, and wouldn't remember the incident. But the next time I dared to make her fish fingers, she pushed them away from me, and said she was never going to eat fish again, because fish should swim in the water, and not be killed for eating purposes, which was quite an unusual thing for a 4.5-year-old girl to say. I remember thinking to myself that when she was older she'd likely become a vegetarian, like my sister, who talked much like Lacey when she was a little girl herself. I cannot describe the relief I felt when I ventured into the woods and found my daughter playing very happily with Ethan and Daniel, without a care in the world, it would seem. I remember rushing towards her, gathering her fondly into my arms, not knowing whether to be mad with her or overjoyed, because she was no longer lost, and I wouldn't have to notify the police or phone my husband to tell him that Lacey had vanished. I couldn't imagine making a phone call like that to him in the middle of the day, and wondering if I'd ever get to see my little girl again. Ostensibly, when I discovered that Lacey had been playing hide-and-seek with the Cortina brothers, I was more than a little annoyed, I have to say. Ethan and his brother are Patty Cortina's children. Patty Cortina is a really good friend of mine. I catch up with her once a week at the knitting circle, where 5 of us good friends get together to have tea and knit colourful patchwork-style squares, which we put together meticulously to create warm blankets for people who struggle financially and probably need blankets during the winter season. There are quite a few knitting circle groups around the Southern California area, well, there were at the time, where women industriously get together to knit blankets for charitable purposes, of course. I knew Ethan and Daniel were very good teenage kids, but what on earth had possessed them to play with my little girl in the woods, before returning her home to me promptly? They had told me they'd found Lacey wandering around the woodgrove aimlessly, and she'd seemed so dreadfully lost and confused. I just couldn't understand why my little girl had been so decidedly naughty.
"Lacey, I need to know why you went into the woods like that," I asked her when we got home. "You know you're not allowed to wander off on your own. I tell you to stay in the backyard for good reason, do I not? And to never go near the woods or the main road. It's not safe. I was extremely worried about you."
At least little Lacey had the good grace to look rather bashful. She hung her head sorrowfully and said,
"Sorry, ma'am, but you were eating a lollipop in the woods with Ethan and Daniel. You shouldn't accept sweets from people. They rot your teeth, don't they? How many times have I told you that?"
"Sorry, Mummy," said Lacey. My daughter was the cutest little girl, and when she apologized to me, I felt like I was the one in the wrong. She was the kind of girl that made your heart melt like butter. She was so adorable.
"Can I have some milk and cookies, Mummy?"
she asked me, with big earnest eyes. I should have told her that because she was so naughty, there would be no milk and cookies. But then I was far too exhausted to care, from all the worry and the stress the day had invited. The whole day I had mapped out, so very perfectly, had gone up in smoke, and frankly I didn't have the energy to do a grocery shop, or even to drop off Lacey at her best friend's house. All that worry, even though it had only lasted for a short time, had sucked the life out of me. I felt like a wilted flower that needed to be plunged into a jar of sugar syrup before I could be revived. I wondered if I should tell my husband about Lacey wandering off like this, but I decided against it. My husband ran a lumber yard, and I didn't want to add to his many stresses. So I decided after a firm talking to Lacey that I would not mention the matter to him,
as it would only serve to upset him. He'd probably insist we get an au pair or something to keep an eye on Lacey, but I certainly didn't want that to happen, for I was desirous to be the only one taking charge over my daughter, although I was mad at myself for being suitably distracted by the presence of Mr. Lambourne, the Hoover salesman. So much so, in fact, that I clean forgot about little Lacey. That was another thing I didn't want to dare mention to my husband, for if he thought I got distracted by a Hoover salesman, he would then insist we definitely got an au pair. I realised I'd come down hard on Ethan and Daniel, who had found Lacey for me, and even though they didn't bring her back home straight away, at least she'd been in their charge, and that in itself was a monumental relief. I knew I should thank them for looking out for her. It was a stroke of luck that they just happened to be hanging around in the woods that morning. I prepared Lacey a glass of milk and cookies, after I'd wiped away the nasty goo from around her mouth. I helped her take a comfortable seat at the breakfast nook. I wasn't too mad about the lollipop that the Cortina boys had given her, as my little girl rarely ever did eat sweets, so indulging in them once in a while wouldn't hurt her, I thought. She had looked so happy when I found her playing hide-and-seek with Ethan and Daniel in the woods, which made me feel all the more bad that Lacey didn't have any siblings. I rather suspected she got lonely at times, which was why she made up an invisible friend that she called the Bear Man, who she claimed watched her from the woods all the time, especially when she was on the swings. She would tell me he'd watch her from the woods all the time, when she was out on her swing. She said the Bear Man really liked her, and would talk to her in her head. When I heard Lacey tell me all this, it made me rather melancholic, as I knew her invisible friend was created in her fertile imagination, as she was on her own, and desperate for young company, I suspected. I so wished I could have had a sister or brother for my little girl, but it wasn't to be. My husband and I didn't really know why I never fell pregnant again after Lacey was born. We wondered whether I should go to a specialist about the matter, but in the end we decided against it, as my husband was a religious man. So he said if I fell pregnant it was God's will, and if I didn't it wasn't meant to be. I guess we decided we were not predestined to have other children, and accepted that. But whenever Lacey talked about the Bear Man, I would be promptly reminded that as an only child my daughter longed to have more friends. So she had created one for herself in her wild imagination. She would tell me the Bear Man was large like a tree, covered with dark brown hair, and had very nice brown eyes, just like her teddy bear. And that would make me smile, but I'd also feel sad about it. I watched my little girl drinking her milk, and then she said, "Daniel also saw the Bear Man, Mummy. The Bear Man came to talk to us in the woods. He talked to Daniel." "Was he now?" I said, humouring my daughter, my eyes glancing down at her pretty dress, that I knew was ruined. "What happened to your dress? I don't think we can fix it, you know. But I can ask your grandmother to make another one for you, because I did love that colour on you so much." "I don't know what happened to it," my daughter admitted. "I imagine you got it caught up in some brambles," I said. "Did you enjoy playing hide-and-seek with Daniel and Ethan?" My daughter nodded, her face brightening. "I really like Daniel," she admitted. "He's ever so nice. And I think the Bear Man liked him too."
In future, sweetheart, if you want to play anywhere with anyone, it needs to be in the backyard, do you understand? I don't want you to go into the woods again. Promise me you won't. If you ever do that again, you won't get any more pocket money. Do you understand what I'm saying?" My daughter Lacey nodded, and I inwardly prayed with all my heart that nothing untoward would ever happen like this again, as I had already had far too many shocks in one day to last an entire lifetime. "Ethan." I was exceedingly nervous when I knocked on Lena's front door, reciting in my mind over and over again what I would tell her about Lisa O'Toole and the incident at the Dairy Queen, and how Seth O'Connor was blackmailing me. Please God, I inwardly prayed, don't let me lose Lacey, not over this. Whether God heard my prayer or not, I couldn't be certain. Lena's mother answered the door to me. "Oh, hello, Ethan. It's good to see you," she said, inviting me into the house. "This is a surprise, isn't it? You're here to see Lena, I suppose. She never told me you were coming around today. I will go and call her for you, shall I?" "Thank you. I'd appreciate that," I said. I waited for Lena's mother to go and call Lena, while I stood there in the entrance hall, like a prize lemon, feeling my heart pounding violently in my chest. I was terrified as how I would tell Lena about everything. I didn't even know how to start this conversation. Lena looked pleasantly surprised to see me. She hadn't been expecting me to drop by, so my visit had been impromptu. Her face lit up like a Christmas tree. Then she frowned, as her lips turned downward. "What's up?" she said. "Are you all right? You look as pale as a piece of paper. Is something wrong? Oh no, something bad hasn't happened, has it? No one is dead, are they?"
"No, it's nothing like that. Well, not as far as I know. No one has kicked the bucket. But we do need to talk, Lena. It's important,"
I said in a sombre tone of voice. Lena looked at me nervously. Her lips pursed a little awkwardly, and she said, "All right, then. We better go outside for a walk. How about we go for a walk in the orchard? And you can say what you need to say there. I could do with some fresh air anyway. It's a bit stuffy in here. Mum, I'm going out to the orchard with Ethan," she called out. "Mind you take your sun hat, love. It's hot out there," her mother responded. It was good to be out of doors. The oxygen in the air seemed to swallow some of my trepidation, even though I was bracing myself for what I had to tell Lena, like an actor behind the scenes, waiting for that pivotal moment to come out onto the stage in front of an entire audience. Similarly, I felt almost as if I had stage fright, as if whatever I had to tell Lena was going to be a struggle. As come what may, my jaw was so tightly clenched together that it almost hurt. I held Lena's hand extra tightly as we walked through the orchard. It was a beautiful crisp day, when the sky was a perfect cup of blue, and the sun was casting its generous warm prisms of light over our faces. But Lacey's big blue straw sun hat kept some of the obtrusive light at bay, because her mother didn't want her to burn her fair skin. Lena turned around to me very suddenly and said, "What is this about, Ethan? You're scaring me half to death. What's this you need to talk to me about? You seem so serious, Ethan. You look so sombre. It's nothing bad, is it? You're not about to break up with me, are you? When people say we need to talk, that's what it usually means."
"No, absolutely not,"
I burst out, squeezing her hand even more tightly.
"I love you, Lena. I'd never break up with you."
I was suddenly worried that I'd gone too far. The last thing I wanted to do was scare Lena away. But she looked heartily relieved that I wasn't about to break up with her, and in a soft voice she said, "I love you too, Ethan." My heart almost missed a beat when Lena told me this, but I didn't know whether her love would suddenly dissipate when I told her about Lisa O'Toole. Please God, no, I thought. I led Lena to the bench at the far end of the yard beyond the apple orchard, and we sat down together side by side, while I gripped her hand ever so tightly, as if I was terribly afraid she'd suddenly snatch it away again. Lena looked puzzled. "I've never seen you look like this before, Ethan. What the hell is going on with you? Please tell me what's up. You're making me unduly nervous."
"I'm being blackmailed,"
I told her. At the startling revelation, Lena snatched her hand away from mine and sat up with a start. Her back was as straight as a pencil. Her blue eyes popped wide open. "You're being blackmailed? You're kidding me, aren't you?"
"No, I'm afraid not. I'm being blackmailed for $500, and I don't have $500 to my name, so I'm in a pickle, so to speak."
Lena's jaw dropped wide open. "Someone is blackmailing you for $500? That's crazy! Who would do a thing like that to you? You realise how insane this sounds? It's like something out of a movie."
"It's Seth O'Connor."
Lacey made a face. "Seth O'Connor! If anyone was blackmailing you, it would be him. I don't like him at all. I never have, and I never will. Why the hell is he blackmailing you? You claim he is your good childhood friend, but it seems he's turned on you." I paused for a moment, fixing my gaze on the apple trees in the orchard. I didn't want to look in Lena's face, not at this moment.
"He's blackmailing me about you," I told her.
"About me? Seth O'Connor is blackmailing you about me?" said Lena, looking transfixed. "I don't understand. Why?" This time I was the one that took in a deep breath to steady myself, and I straightened out my back. I still avoided Lena's gaze.
"Seth was going to tell you something that he believed would ensure that you broke up with me straight away, unless I paid him $500 to buy his silence. He said he'd get his brother Vince to back up his story, to affirm it was true. He knows it's a lie, of course, but he says he'll get you to believe his story, so that our relationship will automatically implode, and you will want nothing more to do with me."
"He said that, did he? Seth O'Connor seems to think that I have a very high opinion of him, does he not? I think that boy's ego has got way too big of late. I'm surprised it even fits in his head. Why would he be so cocky like this, and so presumptuous as to believe that I would trust anything that he had to say to me? What story is this anyway? What is this about?"
"I promise you it was nothing, Lena. Absolutely nothing. You've got to believe me. You have to believe me."
"You're scaring me, Ethan. What was nothing? What have you done?"
"Well, the other day I was walking past the Dairy Queen, and as I walked down the High Street, I saw Lisa O'Toole sitting outside the parlour. Well, you know, on one of those benches. She was in floods of tears. I couldn't walk past her in that state and just wilfully ignore her. That would be a cavalier thing for me to do. So I asked her what was wrong with her. I found out that her cat had eaten her budgie. She was devastated. She loved the budgie very much. I innocently put my arm around her to comfort her and reassure her that everything would be all right. I took her into the ice cream parlour to buy her an ice cream. I figured that it would do her good to get something sugary in her system to calm her down. Seth was sitting there in one of the booths. He saw me. So he figured out a way to blackmail me, I guess. He's going to tell you that we were smooching and that I had my hand wandering up her shirt. But none of that is remotely true. I'd never be unfaithful to you, nor am I remotely interested in Lisa O'Toole, although she's a very sweet girl, of course."
"What an absolute snake in the grass! Seth O'Connor should be ashamed of himself. I hope you told him to get lost. I know all about your run-in with Lisa O'Toole. It was completely harmless. There was nothing more to it. You were being a gentleman, weren't you?"
"You know about it?"
"Of course I do. I forgot to mention it to you. Lisa told me how incredibly lucky I was to have you as a boyfriend, because you bought her ice cream and comforted her when she was crying grievously over her budgie. Of course I know nothing happened between the two of you. You can tell Seth O'Connor that he can lie to me through his teeth if he likes, but I won't believe a single word he has to say. So he can stuff his $500 that he's expecting from you, because he's never going to get it." It was then I proceeded to tell Lena about how desperate I had been to get the $500, because I was so sure that Seth O'Connor would make her believe that I had got frisky with Lisa O'Toole. I told her about how Daniel and I had taken Lacey into the woods and had pretended to find her, in the vain hope that Mrs. Donovan would give us some reward money. I feel ashamed I even went through with this crazy plan. It was mad, and of course it didn't even work. Mrs. Donovan wasn't exactly enamoured that we were playing with her little girl in the woods and failing to bring her home promptly. So we blew any prospect of getting any reward money, but I would feel dishonest in accepting it anyway. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. I just guess I couldn't bear the prospect of losing you, and I'd have done anything to stop that from happening. Oh, you're not going to lose me. You're crazy, Ethan. I told you, I love you. But poor Mrs. Donovan. I can't believe you and Daniel did that. You're crazy. You need to go and apologize to her. Tell her what happened. It's only fair she knows the truth, or she might worry that Lacey will wander off again. She might initially be mad at you, but at the end of the day she'll understand how desperate you were for that money. But don't you ever do something like that again, Ethan. Promise me. Mrs. Donovan. While Lacey was having a sleep in her bedroom, after I had prepared the milk and cookies for her, and helped her changed into her PJs, I sat down at the breakfast nook with a cup of coffee and a couple of magazines to read. I was still feeling flustered about coming close to losing my little girl. If Ethan and Daniel had not found her, God only knows what would have happened to her. Those two brothers had been incredibly helpful, and I owed them a big thank you. I'm not sure that I was concentrating on the magazine I was reading. My mind was wandering in the world of what-ifs. What if Lacey had wandered into the road? What if she'd got lost in the woods and become so very scared? Don't think about any of that, I told myself. At that moment Oliver jumped onto the breakfast nook and began to meow. So I got up from my seat and trudged over to the refrigerator to get him some milk to drink. And that was when I saw a flash of black meandering past the kitchen window and moving towards my washing line. I stared in disbelief at what I was beholding. No, that couldn't be real. It couldn't be. There was no way. Had my day been so dreadfully bad that I was now beginning to hallucinate? I rubbed my eyes as if they were a pair of dusty glasses that I couldn't see through clearly, that had distorted my focus. But then I realized what I was seeing was unequivocally real. There was a man-like being standing by my washing line. He was covered in long flowing dark hair, which when caught under the soft light of the sun gave off an auburn hue. The colour of his hair was magnificent. I had no idea what I was beholding, as I guess I just stood there gawking at this human-like creature from the kitchen, wondering what on earth I was actually seeing, and what this creature was doing with my washing line. At a guess, the creature stood up on 2 feet, very gracefully, I might add. He was approximately 9 foot tall. He had a distinctive cone-shaped head, overlong arms, and was powerfully built. And the first thought that came into my head was, "Oh my goodness! This is the Bear Man! My daughter's fictitious friend is real!" I think the Bear Man sensed he was being looked at. He turned around and looked straight at me, and in that pivotal moment our eyes actually met, and I could see in the depths of his dark eyes was a great kindness. So although this being was exceptionally intimidating, I absolutely knew he imposed no threat to me. I think the thing that took me aback the most was how human he was. But even from the distance, I unequivocally knew this creature was emotionally very intelligent. I watched him pegging something to my line. Then he turned around, looked at me again, nodded politely, and was gone from my sight. I put my hand on my heart, because I could feel it pulsing through my chest, and I asked myself, did I just see that? But I knew that I absolutely did. I ventured out hurriedly in the yard to see what it was that the Bear Man had pegged onto my washing line, and then I realized it was the piece of cloth that was missing from my daughter's dress. I guess the Bear Man must have found it in the wood grove, and was returning it to us, knowing that it belonged to my daughter Lacey, which was a very sweet thing for him to do. Imagine my immense surprise when the next day Daniel and Ethan paid me a visit. I was about to apologize to them profusely for coming down on them so hard, about playing with my daughter in the woods, before returning her to me, when I thought that they should have brought her back at once. Both the Cortina boys looked somewhat sheepish. They insisted they had something important to tell me, and they told me the entire story about how Seth O'Connor had been blackmailing Ethan, and how they had decided to take Lacey into the woods for a short while, so that I'd be extremely grateful to them for appearing to find her. Then I'd give them some reward money, like I'd given Herman Boyd after he found my missing cat. They had hoped that the reward money would be enough to pay off the blackmailer. I was horrified to hear what Seth O'Connor had been doing to Ethan. I mean, blackmailing his friend, whom he'd known since they were in kindergarten together, seemed outrageously shocking to me. But I'd always known there was something insidious about Seth O'Connor, and now it was definitely confirmed. Certainly since he'd beefed himself up a lot and become bigger than all the other boys in senior high. I guess he thought he could intimidate anyone he chose.
The problem is, Mrs. Donovan, I love Lena so much, Ethan told me, and I was terrified that she was going to believe I was getting fresh with Lisa O'Toole. I knew if she thought that, she'd leave me.
Goodness gracious, Ethan, I said. Have more faith in yourself, for goodness sake, and in your relationship with Lena. You're a delightful young man, and I don't believe for a second Lena would think you were cheating on her. You showed such compassion towards Lisa O'Toole, when she was in a desperately vulnerable place, losing her budgie like that. And Seth O'Connor was determined to twist everything to his advantage in order to blacken your name. But he won't get away with this. You need to go to Lena and tell her the entire story. I'm quite sure she'll understand.
I have, Ethan told me. I've done just that. She didn't doubt me. What a fool I've been, Mrs. Donovan. We're just very sorry that we abducted your daughter for a while and gave you such a dreadful scare. But I assure you, we meant Lacey no harm, nor did we mean you any harm.
Of course you meant no harm to Lacey. In fact, when I saw her playing with you in the woods like that, I've never seen her look so happy. But I will say this, you gave me quite the scare. But all is forgiven and forgotten.
You're not angry, Mrs. Donovan? You're not going to tell our mother, are you?
Asked Ethan, looking concerned. Absolutely not. She need know nothing about this, I said, getting my purse and pulling out my checkbook.
What are you doing, Mrs. Donovan? Ethan asked me.
Well, I'm writing you a cheque for $500. But it's not to give to Seth O'Connor, of course. Not for his blackmailing. Never that. It's for the both of you.
But why on earth would you give us this money, Mrs. Donovan? We did a very bad thing. We can't possibly accept it.
But of course you can, Ethan. And I'm giving it to the both of you to share. Because you both had the guts and the courage to come to me and tell me this story. And other people would not have done this. So now I know exactly what happened. And that is worth a reward. You should be proud of yourself for coming clean to me. By the way, Daniel, just so that you know, I saw the bear man that my daughter Lacey was talking about. It turns out that Lacey's fictitious friend is actually real after all.
Can't believe it, said Daniel. You mean to say you actually saw the bear man? I did too when I was with Lacey. He was enormously large. He was worried about what I was doing with your little girl. He wanted to ensure that she was safe, and I meant her no harm.
Good Lord, I said. So it seems like the bear man really is looking out for my little girl. It's good to know that. I was to learn from Ethan that he did indeed confront Seth O'Connor, and told him to his face that he was welcome to go to Lena and tell her that he had cheated on her with Lisa O'Toole at the Dairy Queen. He did tell her that he had $500, but he wasn't going to be giving it to a blackmailer. When Seth O'Connor told Lena about Ethan's behaviour at the Dairy Queen, and that Ethan was so obviously cheating on her with Lisa O'Toole, Lena slapped him in the face and told him what a liar he was. I'm glad to say when Seth O'Connor was 19 years old, he left our part of the world for good. His parents and brother left as well, although we never knew where they went. But I think everybody was silently pleased they were no longer living in our area. I am delighted to say that Ethan did marry his beloved Lena Johnson. They had 2 beautiful children together, and his brother Daniel ended up marrying Lisa O'Toole, and the 2 of them are also extremely happy. And I understand that Lisa has kept budgies all her life, but you can bet there isn't a cat around on her property. As for my daughter, she grew up herself and married, and had children of her own. But she never forgot the special friend of hers that she had as a child, the bear man, who was always watching out for her. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what a beautiful story. Until next time, goodbye and good night.